Hi there, and welcome back to Nikki Does. Today on the channel we'll be building up a bamboo feeder. These are the Panda Placer BambooFeeder AS1s, but this is interesting because it's not the AS1 like this that I've showed before. This is the AS1.1, which is a little bit different, and we'll go through the differences a little bit here at the beginning. I don't know if this is yet supposed to be super public, so I'm just going to show basically the simple differences here. There are some differences with the way it mounts to the rail. They're really cool and interesting, but I'm not going to show the details yet. We'll have to wait a little bit. There's also a difference in terms of how the front works here. And then there are also some differences in the way the springs go, and you'll see those as we get farther along. So here the spring is a two-piece spring that's trapped in here. There's a lower spring here and an upper spring here, and that leaves me room for a number plate. This one will not have room for that. So let's get into the build, and I'll show you. I've built between the two of these types, the 8mm, 12mm of the AS1, and now of this, I've built probably 100, maybe a few over 100 of these feeders. So I've got a pretty good routine down that I thought I would share with you. And we'll try to do this as a one-take video and see how it goes. So come along with me and let's see what we can make. And oh, the other thing I have to apologize for is I decided these were blue, yellow. This is yellow PLA, and this is blue PETG up here. And for a bunch of reasons, I decided to use PLA for a lot of the blue parts, but I do like the different accent color. And I've got bad news, but I used black, and not only just any black, but matte black. So the ability to see these under the light is not great. So I'll try to do my best to zoom in. If you have questions, ask, and I'll do whatever I can to respond either with a separate little video or my comments on the tube. So thanks for watching this so far, and let's get into it. It should be a lot of fun. We'll go right down to the lower camera and take a look. I've tried to do a pretty good job here of laying out the components. I do not know what these are all named in the BambooFeeder directory that comes out of a zip file that you can get off of docs.pandaplacer.com is where you get them. But I do separate these into little sub-assemblies, and I go through and put them all together in a pretty rapid fashion that way. So the first, it doesn't really matter, this one doesn't really matter when you do it, but I like to build up this cover tape take-up spool first. And they're easy, and you can build a lot of them. Print quality here is fairly important. There's ridges around the outside of this, and that's part of the friction that makes sure that we're pulling on the cover tape hard enough, but not so hard to cause a problem. So as I take this pawl wheel, this ratchet wheel right here, and I turn it inside of the take-up spool, it does have a bit of a clicky feel, and we're going to be putting an O-ring rubber band around there to enhance that clicky feel. And then on top of it, because I'm assuming that you're probably not familiar with these, there's this ring that goes around it, and the ring has the version 1.1 ring has a little slot here. And you take your cover tape and slide it into the slot and put enough of it. You could maybe tie a knot in it or whatever, but you put enough of it in here. So that's going to give you your initial friction as you start to wind in here, so the cover tape doesn't just fly right off, you know what I mean? You wouldn't want that to happen. So that's going to give that initial friction. So you can see basically how this goes together. Put the gear in here first, the what did I call that? Not pawl gear, anyway, that gear thingy. Put this in first. And that way, when you put the rubber band around it, the O-ring rubber band, you're not going to break these really loosely held pieces here. They're only held by a little bit in the edge. So if you put that in first, it gives it some rigidity, some substance. Now, let's zoom in a lot. Now there's a groove in the center here, and you're going to get the O-ring into that groove, and you're going to wrap it all the way around the entirety of here and snap it down. And just double check that it didn't get caught in between somewhere. So it's all the way around here. That's really all that matters. And then there are three bumps, three lobes, if you will, right here. And that's going to match up with this. And you may as well stick them on the right way now, but you're going to have to take this off when you load your tape and reel components in here anyway. So that's a bit of the way it looks. You can see the pawl here that's going to ride on the bumps on the inner, this feed wheel, this what I called the pawl, I guess, before. Now you have an O-ring in there, so if I turn this, I can feel some friction as it jumps each one of these things. That's the friction clutch that allows this thing to keep the cover tape tension tight, but not so tight that it tears the cover tape off. Then you've got this cover here. We're just going to set that stuff aside. This is going to happen later. So the next thing I build has nothing to do with this, and not yet with the servo, and not yet with these other bits over here, but it's really all this stuff in the middle, and the servo will be last. And for this, we're going to use the flathead screws. There's 3 kinds of screws in here. There's a flathead with a point. There is a pan head, or some sort of rounded head. Some people would call that a cheese head because it's like a wheel of cheese on the top. It has no point on it. There's a reason why we care about that for one of the places where it's going to go. And then the third one comes with the servos in the kit, and that one is an integral washer head. And again, this one comes with the servos. I did forget there's a 4th one, and that's the one that holds the servo horn onto the servo. I'm not going through how you cut this off on leaving the first hole intact, and how you get this centered up like this. You attach it to the BambooFeeder, and you send an M command to it to do that. I'm not really going through that. I think that's already in my other video. If you need me to go through that again, feel free to ask, and I'll do that. I'll do another video on that. But let's just assume you've got this put together already. It's cut off and screwed on here, and it's screwed on in the right place. It's really important, though. All right, let's get back out here. Now that we have our cover tape take-up reel done, the next thing I like to do, or actually I do these all in batches, I batch up a bunch of these assemblies next. So I put a screw on my, just so you see what I'm using, it's a #1 Phillips from Huya. And I do have another tool here, which is even more awesome, from Hyos, and that's a automatic screwdriver, which is really cool for putting all these on here. So you'll see me use that too. All right, so this thing, funky looking part here, print orientation, by the way, this is the print bed, pretty obvious one. It's got a bunch of protrusions hanging out up above. It's got a flathead spot and stuff, so it should be real obvious to you that that's the face is the build surface. All right. These are PLA parts. I'm printing them at 0.15 millimeter layer height. I use cheap PLA. I think this is Hatchbox, but I also use Sunlu quite a bit. Both I get on special, usually pretty inexpensive. So this one you're going to assemble. It's just like the version. It's the same components actually as the version 1 feeder. We're going to back this screw off just a bit, just like we did in version 1, so that flops around. That's going to ride on the escapement wheel here. I've called that 8 different names so far. That's going to ride on this wheel here, and it's going to push it forward and allow it to slip back each time. Next thing I do, I get a screw started in this, what I call the yoke. I get a screw started on the thicker side. It's a thin side where my finger's touching and a thicker side. I'm going to get a screw started on the thicker side. Don't start it too far. If it pokes into the space of the yoke here, this gap, the next part won't work. Now I take these two, now that I've got these two going on, I've got the hook facing down, and I need this hook to face down also. So right now it's facing up, that's backward. The hook has to face down. So I've got a hook facing toward the bottom of your screen here, hook facing toward the bottom of my screen here. That's the way it's going to go, but I hold it like this. It's a lot easier to hold. And I run in this screw. This screw is more of a pin. It doesn't really thread into the moving parts, so as long as it's down there and you don't have to crank it down, there's enough wiggle room in there. It's no big deal, and it doesn't matter. So that's all fine. So you can tighten it up, a little tighter, and don't worry about it. So we've got 3 parts together right now with 2 screws. We have a 3rd screw to put in, another flathead down through this hole, and we need one of these guys. This is going to connect the servo horn that we just showed to this whole assembly in my left hand. And the hole we're using here is the one that has the spring pocket in it. There's the spring pocket right there by my thumbnail. And we're going to go into that hole with it. So here too, pretty quick and easy. There's no reason why that's blue or PETG. It just happens that's the way I printed it. You could print it out of whatever you want. That can be PLA, it'll work just fine. All right, that one's gotta be loose enough to turn fairly easily. Really all these have to flop around pretty easily. All right, the last one, and an improvement in version 1.1, is that this is now a flathead, a plain old flathead, which was kind of a pain in the older version that you couldn't use that, and you can see that in the old video. This one I'm going to thread in some like that, and I do leave a little bit of a point sticking out on this one. And I'm going right into that hole on the servo that I showed earlier. So there's one hole left on the servo. I've already threaded into it once, but I'm going to go right in there, trying to do it while I'm looking at the camera, which is awful. And thread this down, same deal. It's got to go in there. It's got to be tight enough, but not so tight that it won't rotate. So let's do a quick check when we're done. That spins pretty easily. This is a little tight, but not terrible. That's going to work just great. All right, so that's an assembly now. In my world, I would do a bunch of these assemblies. If I'm doing like 20 feeders, I would do like 20 of these and 20 of these, because you can get all the parts out for them and not have your bench all full of lots of stuff. And you tend not to forget to do operations if you do it this way. These are pretty easy. They're not real fiddly. So then I just have a stock of these sub-assemblies that when it comes time to do the final build, I'm ready to go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to insert this sub-assembly into the housing. If you printed this properly, I use Prusa slicer, and I paint on a support in this area only. That's the only support I add here, and I've already picked that support out of this housing. I think it's probably picked out of all of them. So yeah, I already picked that out, and it comes out pretty easily if you do your stuff pretty right. It's probably also a good idea to make sure that this servo connector fits through that hole and fits through that hole, which it sort of does. If you wait to the last minute to do it, you've got springs and everything in here, and you've got to try to trim that while you're doing that. So I would pre-trim those and test that that fits through there. So that's in prepping this part. Other little side note, make sure that this pawl here, this ratchet pawl part, is properly formed by your printer. If that's not formed correctly, then your gear won't ratchet properly. So if that doesn't work, I know it's a part that hangs out there in free space, and it's kind of floppy, and if you have bed adhesion problems, that's not going to adhere to the bed. So just check all those before you get all excited about using one of these frame things. All right, let's stick this part in here. Again, I'm already assuming that you've run your servo to its neutral position. That's a very important part. This is the way we fold it up. The wire comes out to the left. This floppy pawl goes out to the left. The servo arm goes out to the right here. And the rigid pawl, this is the one that drives the tape forward, that goes out to the right. We're going to drop this in here. Super easy. Fits right in. If that servo arm is forward like that, I just said super easy, I know I did, but I didn't really mean super easy. This feeder design is meant to push with quite a bit of force against the end stop here to get reproducible positioning of the part pickup windows, part pickup spaces in the window right here where my finger is touching. So this is actually kind of under compression right now. And if you don't like that, you could pre-rotate your servo back a little bit. I'm going to leave it that way. It's just fine. I have to press a little to get my servo to sit in the slot. Oh well. So there we go. This can flop around here. It doesn't matter. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the servo into the frame. And for that, we're going to use the washer-headed screws. Again, those came with the servo. I highly recommend you use a screwdriver with a round shaft, not something with a hex shaft on it. I don't think I have one down here to show, but if you use that, you're going to potentially wreck the wiring down here, and I'll show you how. So this is a bit of a tricky spot. The left side's fairly easy. You have an access hole here for your screwdriver. You can use the tweezers, which is what I showed in the prior video, But I've gotten pretty good where I just dive the screw down from the top and get it into the hole. And I get it started in there. I don't worry about the fact that it's off angle a bit. Well, it didn't work that time. So if you need to use the tweezers, hey, this is live TV, friends. If you need to use the tweezers, just grab the screw with the tweezers and get it started in that hole. It's super easy. And there it goes. That's the easy one. The other one's a little more tricky. The other one, the wire's in the way. So let's try it that way that I just showed the first time. Now that the servo's in partly, it'll sit flat anyway. So there I am over the top. I'm at an angle. Terrible practice, right? But I'm only going to go in a thread or two like that. Now I'm going to come back down to the proper place. I'll go over the wire, and you can see here I'm grinding on the wire, which is, the flights of that Phillips head are kind of grinding on the wire. You can, I think I put it away, but you can use a number 0 Phillips for this operation too. I'm a lefty, so you got to deal with this being upside down. So there is an access hole there. I can go through here, and with a number 0 Phillips, I can actually go right on top of the wire without destroying the wire, and that's my favorite way to go. So that would be my suggestion, is that you use a number 0 Phillips to put that one in. Normally, I consider that super naughty to use the wrong driver head size, but like all rules, you should make exceptions and break them from time to time. So look how this is wanting to pop up. It really doesn't want to sit flat in there, and that's going to cause us a little bit of a headache with the spring. So I probably would recommend that you pre-rotate those servos a little bit before you, after you do all the putting the horn on and stuff, you can pre-rotate them. The spring's going to want to jump out as we're putting all this together, and it's going to be a little bit of a pain. I think we're just going to suffer through that. So the next thing really, where I go with this is to put everything together and get that top on as soon as I kind of can. And I just realized one thing I forgot to bring with me is one of the black nuts. So I think bear with me here. Let's take one that I've already assembled and let's get one out. I'm going to pause this and we're going to go extract a nut. It's like it was there all along, All right, so we're back again. Now I'm going to drop this. Now this one has only one nut in a nut pocket, whereas the version 1 feeder had one nut back here. Look, that one's missing, and one over here. So this one only has one nut in the nut pocket back here. If you turn it over, it will fall back out, so don't do that. And my advice to you is to end up with the brown wire of the servo toward the bottom. This is the bottom, this is the top. So the brown wire, as you go through this back slot, the brown wire should face the bottom. So let's spin this around a few times. We need to take up pretty much all the space, because one of the advantages of the version 1.1 feeder is that the connector isn't flying free like this, but it's going to get put into a retaining slot. So when you install the feeder on the machine, it is fully connected. So I go around 3 times like that. And then, like I said, the brown wire to my left, the bottom, I put that through the slot. I come back up through the second slot here. And what we're going to do now is run this through that gap, through this gap. And we're going to make a bit of a tight loop here and press it in there. So the brown wire has to be facing away from you. The orange wire on top, the brown wire is ground, and that has to be facing away from you. There is a feature on the top surface to press these wires down. I'm just going to push them down in here so they don't pop out while we're doing the rest of the assembly. So that's all in. Don't forget that part, or remember that part, and remember to put that nut in there. Everything else is pretty obvious. Now for the spring. Spring is easy, but it is a spring, so it tends to go spring from time to time. There's a little post here, a little nub, and I'm going to start by putting the spring on that nub on this side. Then I'm going to take a flat screwdriver. This one's too narrow, but we're going to use it anyway. This is a 3mm. I'd prefer a 4. I'm going to go into one of the last coils on the spring, and I'm going to use my finger to keep the spring from going somewhere I don't want it to, like in my face. And I just made sure that this end of the spring sits into the pocket. There's a pocket in here, and we want that end of the spring to go into the pocket fully. If it does that, it's going to behave the way it should and stay fairly straight. It can't really get out. I'm holding my finger over this because, as you saw earlier, the whole thing is spring loaded. And just double checking. I've got this sub-assembly is in, I've got my spring in, I've got the nut in, I've got the wire wrapped around. That is all I need to put the top on. So I'm going to set the top on. Hopefully it doesn't pop out, and it didn't. And now I'm going to take the the quick driver here and run in 6 screws. This one is preset torque, so it'll stop right at the proper torque. This nut at the end stops the torque. These are super cheap on the bay. I've had these for years and years and years and years and years. I have a bunch of them, but they're super cool. So here's the 6th one. I'm also a screw counter, by the way. Learned that in aviation, is that you should always count your screws, count how many you tighten, so you don't forget a screw or drop one somewhere and wonder what happened. All right. So that's it for the base feeder. Let's put the spool on there. The spool is as easy as pressing it on and getting that ratchet piece in place. This one goes up top, sits on top there, and it's, again, all wobbly, but that's okay. We'll talk about this wire in a bit. There's a slot here, and the back-forth action of the, now the arm is gone, but the back-forth of this arm is guided by that tab, so make sure when you print it that tab prints properly. That's important. We're going to put the spool cover on, and the spool cover, the flat side goes toward the tape, and the raised side, this is obviously the way we printed on the bed. This is the bottom. And then this raised bump here faces outward. So we're using a flathead screw for that. Remember, we're using flatheads for everything so far except for mounting the servo and the servo horn. I always forget about that one. So we're going to put that in there and spin it around. There's now a little dimple for where it should go, which is this way. So here's the front. This does not have to spin with the cover tape, by the way. So that can be fairly tight on there. This will now actuate, and the cover tape will go around, but the front spool doesn't spin. That looks like it should, but it doesn't. It's okay. Now we've got a flathead, not a flathead, a pan head, cheese head screw here. We're going to take that screw and put it in through the spring. This is a flathead, I'm sorry. This is a flathead. Do not use the cheese head screw for that one. So this is a flathead, and we go through the spring. So this is different from the version 1 because this is a single spring, single piece spring. I call it the mustache spring because it looks a bit like a mustache. Whatever. If you want to tease me in the comments, have fun with that. But I'll probably just delete them anyway because they will be unpleasant, and I don't like unpleasant things. So we'll screw this down. I was kidding. That's now in place. The spring is sitting on top of the ratchet pawl arm back here, and it's sitting squarely on top of the feeder part, right under its little shark fin looking bit. There's the shark fin looking bit with the pawl sitting right on top of it. It's where it just naturally ends up. I didn't have to do anything special for that. We're almost done. We've got to put a tensioner screw in the top here. That is a cheese head. This is one of the two, actually, is one of the 2 cheese head screws that we're going to use. This is an adjustment that you'll make as you change from part type to part type. So if you're just doing like 0402 resistors, this can stay the same for resistors and caps because they're all the same. But if you go from a paper tape to a plastic tape, you'll want to close up that gap. There, it's closing up right now and back open again. And then this front thing is an anti-return part, another cheese head button, flathead, not flathead, cheese head, pan head type screw. It's probably easiest to start threading into this hole. This is the operative part of the part, the operative feature. Is that going to focus? Nope. So that's got to be formed properly. Come on. All right, now it's a battle. Focus lock. All right. We'll take over ourselves. All right, so that little feature right there has to be formed quite well. This one is PLA. I've done these out of PETG. I'm having a lot of trouble with stringing right now with PETG, so I'm doing this out of PLA. PETG, I guess, is now the in vogue term for that, so I'll try to remember that. For all of you who are going, what the hell is he talking about? All right, this one sort of faces backward. There's a hole up front already for it, so you don't need the pointy, flathead pointy bit. This may need some adjustment. There is a bit of adjustment in the screw slot, so you can push this back and forth. It may need some adjustment, but you make sure I'm done. I think that's it. This feeder is done. Well, I did mention I was going to do this. So here's the wire in the back. You have the brown wire at the bottom. And there's a couple ways you can work with this. If you know you're going to keep the servo with the feeder forever, you could put a dab of glue in there, or silicone would be smart, and that'll hold it in. Or you can use the double stick tape that comes with the Panda Placer feeder. There's a roll of it that comes with it. It's this wide. And you can lay that into the groove, but it doesn't quite fit. So I'm kind of a fan of the dab of silicone, like the clear silicone. And then that glues that in. And now when you're done, this feeder is, I think this one's 10 millimeters wide, maybe 12, but I think 10. So everything fits within that space. So yeah, that's it. There's the way the feeder connects to the main board. Some interesting mounting stuff going on here. Some interesting mounting stuff with the front here. Otherwise, it's largely the same as the last. We changed the 2 springs into the single spring. We lost the label spot here, so this is feeder 13. So we lost the ability to put the label there, but maybe that's okay, because what if we could put the label out here somewhere, and then we could use vision to see what feeder it was. We could use OCR or barcode reader to figure out what feeder is out there. Maybe that would be cool. So there's a Panda Placer V1 on the left in yellow, lemon yellow, and here's one in vanilla white. Believe it or not, the color doesn't affect the way it works. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. It feels like an anticlimactic ending, you know? We need the outtakes. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was useful. If you did, do the thing and press the like button. I know it's easy, and I know subscribing is also easy. I won't spam you with tons of crummy videos. If you didn't like it, send a comment and let me know what to do. If you have anything that you want more clearly laid out, let me know that too, and I will be happy to do it. As always, thank you so much for watching Nikki Does, and look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.